criticizing type tone when I talk about things, and I basically said if you forge like this, you're doing everything just wrong, and apparently that just sounds really bad. And I had, and this is more of the, this is the, this, this is made for the people who don't like very good constructive criticism and might feel upset if I say something a certain tone. But the thing that I found pretty funny is the fact that the person who commented that I saw his profile picture, he looks like he was in the military, and I'm like, sir, you're up. It's like, so why are you in the military if you can't take the way I'm saying things? But anyways, let's try to forge some terrain here. Well, not try. Let's actually do. And I will try to explain the best of my ability with every detail on how to forge natural terrain. Now, this terrain here, what we're going to do is we're using Title's flat terrain. Now, for this map, you can, for Title, you can use whatever you want. I like to use Title's terrain. Now, what I will say in the future, for future reference, if you continue to build maps on here, because I know a lot of people don't, please do not do one of these things or use this as the beach. Title's objects have an automatic thing to where it makes a beach automatically. You don't need that. Now, this is where my criticism comes, to where it comes off rude. I think it looks atrocious when someone does that, because this here, I don't know why some people decide to do this. The thing that I see people do is they'll do this. This looks really bad. Like, you have one set of sand, and then they have like this other set of sand that you can see slowly growing, and it just does not mix and match. It looks terrible. It's just, it looks ugly to me. I don't like it. So if anybody, if you're forging, please don't do that. Kind of just do something different, because that there just, and again, I'm not trying to be mean. It just looks bad. But what we're going to do here is we're going to make a small little scenery area. We're not going to make it look all super duper nice and pretty. We're just going to do something simple, and that's it. Now, what I'm going to use here, I'm using Alpine's Rocks with Title's Terrain. Alpine's Rocks with Title's Terrain looks pretty good. It's these are good objects to mix and match. They go pretty well together. I love the objects, and I love how they just kind of fit so perfectly, in my opinion. Now, here's the thing with if you're using certain objects, see what goes together, what looks good, and what does not. Not every single thing looks good together. Not every single rock goes with another rock. Not every single rock goes with a certain type of terrain, and not every single terrain goes with every single rock. Another type of rock you could use if you wanted to would be Asteroid. It's also an okay thing to use with Title's terrain. It's just a slightly darker color. It's like a more of a grayish color for this. I think I used that for an Installation 04 type of throwback map that I made, and it just fits. In my opinion, it fits pretty well. But the tip here when you're building terrain, if you're building something that has a cliff like this little cliff that goes off into the water, what I like to do is try to make sure the cliff's pretty okay into the water to where it looks like it kind of fades into the darkness of the ocean. So that way it doesn't look like it just cuts off. Now, some objects, you can just grab it and just do this. Oh wow, I didn't teleport underneath the water. That's pretty cool. You can just kind of do that and just try to put that as low as you can without it, you just disappearing. But this also takes away from the budget of the map that you're building. So that there could be a detail that you could add for later. Now, when you're making cliffs, make sure that everything is unique and it is not a repeat of itself. Never have the same object repeat. If the same object repeats, it looks really, it doesn't look like nature created it. It looks like a player or like it looks man-made, which takes away from a map's design. So if you say you had a map that had nothing but nature, and you said, "Oh yeah, nature had like this is a map that's all built about around nature or a forest," and if it's just the same repeating tree or like rocks or whatever else is in that forest that is in the same position as the other, it's not going to look good. It's going to look a little bit weird. It's not going to look as if nature has created it. It is going to look like you, the builder, did make the map. If you've seen a lot of my maps, a lot of people, well, if you've seen any of my maps, a lot of you should know that a lot of my stuff, I try to make sure a lot of rocks and objects don't repeat. And if they do, it's just because I couldn't figure out any other way how to place it or whatever else. That's kind of what happens sometimes in Forge, is that sometimes you just kind of have to go with what you can do and get the map to work the best you can. Now, right here, now when you're putting off cliffs, and if you use one of the big chunks, try to put some terrain that kind of leads off and kind of, just cuts off at some point to kind of make sure that it just doesn't, like, end as soon, where it just kind of just end off of as like a little square box with this little line right here. You don't want that, because that will just kind of, delete the whole part of it looking like it's, natural terrain. So you kind of want to keep, trying to make sure that everything looks as natural as possible. And if there's a bunch of hills here, now a lot of times hills can be perfectly fine, just depends on how flat they are or how they end up turning out. What I like to do, if there's some hill-like terrain, I try to get like a larger version of one of those blocks and kind of make sure it evens it out to a certain point to where it doesn't look like to make it look a little bit more natural as possible. Now, right here on cliff sides with this terrain right here, there's two things you can do here. When you're making a cliff, you can either get another object like this, like another bit of terrain, and you can do this and just kind of like turn it like this and just kind of face it into the rock, and it kind of gives it more of that like rough little rock area. And if you want it to go down even more, you can. That's entirely up to you. If you want to put, a smaller cliff rock or some other rocks sticking out of that, you can. This is one way you can do that. And this is what I've done on some of my maps when I don't have anything else to use. But the other thing you can do is you can take a chunk and just do this. Just kind of have that sticking out there, and it fixes that, and it makes sure that there isn't just something just kind of hanging there, and it doesn't look out of place. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to make the little background area. Now, these large chunk of rocks here, I love these. These are very useful for many of my maps. These right here are more or less kind of like the edge. Like these kind of make up a lot of my maps as mountains and larger areas around the maps that I built. This can kind of just be like your corner bits that kind of keep the map where they are. Now what we'll do next is we'll go to the cliffs. Why did I go all the way to the bottom? And we'll just use the curve here. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that this little rugged bit kind of sticks out. And it so that way it doesn't go from like flat phased to just rugged. So we kind of want to make it look like it kind of just slowly outcropped out to here and make it look as natural as possible. Now right here, these rocks right here on these terrain bits right here on that rock can go perfectly with that, and we got that there. Now what we can do here is we can duplicate one of these, and because this has little corner bit there, we can kind of just do that. If we want, we can kind of make the mountain look a little bit more like that, and there we go. Now we're gonna add some smaller cliffs to kind of give this more of its own, to make sure it doesn't look like it's just one cliff. It can kind of looks like there's different layers to it, and it gives it more character. Just trying to figure out the right word for that. It gives a little bit more character, and it makes it look a little bit more, makes it look a bit more alive and a little bit better. So there you go, we got there. So we got our natural terrain here. We got our nice little rocks. We got a little canvas here. Looks all nice. Now right over here, if you want to make a little area that can kind of like a little terrain ramp going down, you can. We'll get to that near the end of the video, though. I want to show what we're going to do here. We want to get to the important stuff for the key base part of natural terrain. Now, with terrain, the next thing we're going to focus on is the foliage. Now, when you're putting down trees, or you're putting down grass, or anything else like that, you want to make sure that not every single thing is going to stand up. I'm going to show you the bad example of how to build trees, and then I'm going to show you the correct example of how you're supposed to build trees. Well, place trees, not build them. Now, as some people do, they'll just put trees all willy-nilly, kind of like this. They won't take their time to, just have a variety. It's just the same tree repeating. They're all facing the same direction, and it looks a little bit weird. So if we're running around a map, if you're running around a map and you're looking at these trees and it's like, well, that hole's there. That hole's there too. All the holes are facing the same direction. All the trees are facing the same direction. They're all standing up straight, and it's like, they don't have variety. Now, why does this matter? It matters because not every single tree in real life stands straight up. If you're wanting a map to look natural, if you want it to look like it's alive, you want to go for more of some trees that kind of just are slightly angled, that they're slightly at a different angle, or some that are turned a different direction, and like a little bit more out of the ground than others, and some that are a little bit more into the ground, so that we want to have variety. We want to make sure that the trees aren't all facing the same way, that they're not all leaning the same way. And that's it. It's the key for me. It's the key thing to whenever I'm building a map, to make sure that the map feels like it is. It's a little bit more alive, and it gives more of that aesthetic look to it, and it makes sure that the map feels, like there's more to it, or like more stuff to look at, and makes it a little bit more appealing to the player's eyes. And because I try to think of this into a way of how a game creator would do it. When a game creator builds a world that, like, let's use Bungie as an example, because a lot of the stuff that they make is really good. Most recent expansion, Forsaken, the skybox to the Tangled Shore and the Dreaming City is amazing. It's beautiful. It's something that you just want to keep looking at and exploring and look around and see all the sights. That's if you're wanting people to see that with the map, you kind of have to make sure that everything looks like how a game creator would create. And yo, what's up, Sonic Fan 117? Who's watching the stream of this? Now with here, we're gonna try to make sure every single tree is not facing the same way. Now, some people might say, why not just put a variety of trees? Well, if you put too many different trees down in one area, it can kind of be like, if you're going for a wacky looking map that kind of has its own appealing thing to it, you can do that. That's entirely up to you. Again, I like to try to stick with a certain theme to it and make sure that it looks the way that it does. But here we got our trees. Now this doesn't need too many trees. This is the amount of trees that we need. We don't need any more. Now we're gonna add a few small rocks down. Now some maps, we're gonna see we need to have few rocks. Now with title, I like Title's terrain because it gives like these little gravel-like areas where there's no grass, and that's kind of where I like to put some of my rocks to kind of, because it kind of, you know, just fits, and there's not because a lot of uh terrain bits don't really have that. A lot of them kind of just have constant grass areas, and they have small little bits where it kind of looks like, terrain kind of, you know, uh, how do I word it? Trying to figure out the correct way to say it. It wouldn't look right for a rock to be in that certain area, if that makes sense. But it kind of, again, if you're good at placing rocks. Oh, it's Phoenix. All right. What's up, Phoenix? But you want to make sure that you don't put certain rocks in certain areas to where they don't look weird. Now this rock, what I like to do with it, because now I am going to say what I like to do with certain rocks is I like to kind of make it like one of those rocks that kind of just stick up and it kind of ramps up a little bit, kind of like that. So you kind of just run up it and be like, oh, that's cool. That's kind of what I like to do here. So right now we have our rocks, we have our trees. Now, what's next? The next part that we're going to need is grass, foliage. Now, the grass and foliage is the last thing that a lot of people put on their, is the last thing that you want to put on your maps, because if you start doing this when you're building a map, you might be screwing yourself. Now, what I mean by that is because if you're not finished with the map and you just finished with that area, you might have to go back and delete that grass. And a lot of times, that's what I've done on some of my maps, is I'll do all the details first, and then I'll go finish some part of the map, and then I'll go do more details, and I'll end up running out of objects, and that's not good. Now, there is one thing about these grass bits. Not every single one of them are fully rectangle shaped. This one here has its own, like, little design, so does this one. And when we get to about, I think here... Actually, no, this isn't the... That's not it yet. This one's a little bit more round, but when I think we get to about maybe to about the 8s is when the grass starts to get into that rectangular shape. Is they start to get from that. They'll start going from like these nice little roundish, like kind of patches of grass to more of this rectangular like shape. Now, if you're gonna just put small patches of grass, I'll show how to do that. You kind of just have to spread it out and kind of make it look as good as possible. Now, not every single map, you don't have to put a lot of grass down. This is entirely up to you. Some maps look good without grass, and some don't. My maps, a lot of times when I put grass on it, it's because I want the map to... Oh, okay, calm down. It's because a lot of my maps I try to make it look aesthetically pleasing, and it kind of just doesn't go right if there's not grass. But what we're going to do here is what I'm going to show you. We're going to get a long patch of grass, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do with that. So I think about 16 by 48. Now, if you do use the rectangular grass, what I like to do with it is these little corner bits here, I just kind of like to put them like this. Because the rocks themselves will make the curve for you. And it will just give you this cool little patch where you can just put that there. And you don't have to worry about trying to shape the grass into a certain way that you need it to be. It'll automatically do it for you, and it saves you the time from trying to forge your own patch of grass out of the smaller bits, and it just saves a lot of time with certain details if you want grass near, like, the cliffs or whatever else. And right here, we just got our nice little patch of grass. That's all we need. Kind of like against the rocks. So that's a little bit of a tip, a little bit of a little cheat to forging grass on a map. It's a little helpful tool that kind of comes with it. Now, I will say be careful when you're using the larger patches of grass, because if you have a curved like surface, it can kind of mess with how the grass will look. So you kind of have to be careful with how you place that at that point. you can mess up a little bit and it won't look as good as it should be looking. Now putting this right here, as you can see, nice little patch of grass, not too much. Now if you want to make sure, if you want to kind of like fill in that gap where the bits of grass don't really connect with the rock, you can just put down these small patches and it will kind of give that a little bit more of a terrain feel to it. Anyway, we can take this curved one and just do that. Connect it to that little bit there, and that little bit of patch of gravel can kind of separate that with a smaller bit right here. So there we got a little bit of terrain. Looks nice. Not too much, not too little. And we got a nice little bit of grass going up against the rocks. Now if you're putting grass out here, I'm half tempted because you can take a square patch and then place it and then kind of make your own little forage object of grass. What I mean by your own little forage object is that you can forage a nice big patch of grass for yourself, and then I've done it before, I don't really know exactly how to explain it. Make like a big, huge, natural palette of, grass. See if I can get a... So we get this one here. So what I like to do with this, because that ground right there is flat. That's flat right there. And kind of just bring this up in the sky real quick. Now, this is where we'll use magnets. So that way all the grass is evened out, and then we'll just group it all together and see where we can go from there. So we'll turn on the magnets. Now the magnets, I love them in this game because you can easily turn them off with just a small click of a button. You don't have to search for it in MCC. Well, you have to search for it in MCC. You don't have to search for it on here, which is great. So we'll just do something kind of like this. Turn that a little bit. Duplicate that. Flip that around. Kind of make a little bit... Kind of make your own little patch of... Kind of make your own type of grass. Make your own... Now don't forget to use magnets so that way it evens it out. And don't touch the A or the B button. Don't fly up or down here because that'll mess up your little... it'll mess up what you're doing. Now, to make this not a full-on square, you can take these small patches, just kind of put these around it. Make sure that there's not too many of them, because too many can make it look man-made. Now, in a part of grass, I guess it can kind of look a little bit man-made, because some grass can be... Now, that's actually, no, that's more of if you're making a... That's kind of more of a... If you're making a garden, now I think about it. If you're making it man-made looking. But we'll take more of this. We'll spread these out. Now, in the comment section down below, for only who are watching, if you want to make prefabs of these, so you can have like little patches of grass without having to make it yourself, I will make prefabs, but that is entirely up to you, the viewers. But here we got a patch of grass here. Now the other thing is because it's on the ground, if you duplicate it and then turn it a different way and put it somewhere else, it's not always going to look the same. It'll look different. It'll be different. And you don't have to worry about someone being like, oh, you just reused the same patch that you already put. So we got this, and we got a good amount of grass. Except for over there. We need a little bit more. We need more of a patch right over here. And there we go. We got our patches of grass. We got our terrain. We got all that looking up right here. Looks real nice. Look, it looks real good over here. The terrain around here is not too wide. It's not too big to where there's not too many patches of grass that there's too many gaps between. Now, if you want to put flowers down, I'm not really good at putting flowers down. Flowers are more of a you'd probably use more of the like the medium patches of it. Kind of just put these for wherever you want, I guess. On one of my maps, I do have a bit of terrain that kind of have this thing to where certain flowers exist on certain levels of where they exist on certain heights of the map, which means if it's some set of flowers exist on a high place and the other set exist in a lower place, and that's kind of like up to you. But you know, we got some flowers, adds a little bit more stuff to it, and it looks a bit nicer. And we have our natural terrain. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, leave a like. I'm kidding, we're not fully done yet. This video is probably going to be like 30 minutes long because of this bit over here. Now this here is probably the annoying part if you're making ramped terrain. Ramped terrain is kind of like a hard thing to do. It kind of just depends on how you use the ramped piece. So what we'll do is we'll just do this. We'll flip this one over to its flatter side. Yes, I said flatter. I don't know if that's actually a word or not. We'll wing it. And we'll it kind of just, you know, brings the terrain down a little bit more. And we'll have... Ramp terrain is kind of like, it's a challenge. It's more, it's a challenge for me. For other people, it might be really easy. It's kind of making it, in my opinion, sometimes, depending on the map. When you're doing it, you kind of have to be a little bit careful with how you do it. Because sometimes, if you do it a little bit wrong, some parts will stick at, like, you can see where the lines of the ramp is. When I make terrain, I try to make sure that you can't see where the terrain is, kind of gaps, like the ramp terrain gaps from the, flat terrain. I try my best to do that. And in some parts in real life, some part of nature sometimes actually kind of does that. So here and there, that is okay. Now, I am going to say one thing. If you're making cliffs like this, sometimes if you end up repeating an object with the cliffs, go ahead and do it, because here and there, sometimes people might not notice it. But if you want to do it without repeating a single object, because this here is just a repeat of, like, one is facing this way, one is facing that way, and I kind of do that sometimes, but a lot of times people don't look at the cliffs, they just look at all the other stuff around here. And we'll take one of these patches of grass, and we'll put this right over here. Now, putting grass on ramp terrain, I don't really have a full-on good way to do that. That's more of... I'll leave that to whoever wants to do that. They can. I'm not really good at doing that. But this is all I have for this tutorial. We've gone on for about 30 minutes. I'm not going to make this an hour-long one. That's just ridiculously stupid. But I hope you guys enjoyed this little Forge tutorial on natural terrain in Halo 5. I wanted to, again, try to make a better video on natural terrain since the last one came off strong as it came off as me being really, really rude. And again, I apologize to some people. Now, this is the part of me being of where I grew up. This is what I'm going to say. From where I grew up, if you couldn't take how someone said something to you, you were just counted as a wuss. And you just kind of, like, were just a little, like, people said back in the day you were known as a sissy boy or whatever else. You just couldn't take what some people said, and a lot of times with the way I criticize the way people build some things, that is just it's more. I try to do it more in the case of like, not every single person is going to give you a participation award for trying. It's I try to be as honest as possible with some people, and if I know it will like make them really upset, then I won't be honest with people sometimes. But I try to be honest of how I feel about certain things, because with Forge and building maps, because building stuff in games, I've always loved to do that in Halo Reach. A lot of my maps got saved in Halo Reach's time, and I loved people bookmarking my stuff on Halo 5. It's amazing. And still, again, to this day, my most popular map is my open world St. Helios map. Now, if you're making background stuff, just put a few trees. You don't have to do too much. And that's the whole tutorial. Anyways, again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, hit the subscribe button. Comment down below if you want me to make some prefabs of some grass-like bits that you can use, like little patches of grass. Because again, not every single one of these will, because again with grass, it's kind of hard to place down if you don't do it a lot. And I know a lot of people don't do it a lot because it just takes up a lot of time, and it is time consuming because these are very small objects compared to most pieces of a map. And I would be happy to make, some prefabs for people, so that way you're not struggling for hours trying to make these little patches here. But anyways, I will see y'all in another video, another Forge tutorial in the future. I will say this, I will be making a how to forge Covenant buildings, and like, not buildings, more like hallways and things and just things of that nature on here. I will be teaching how to build some UNSC stuff, and one of the things I'll be showing is something that I learned from Forge Labs. And I'll probably just put the link to Forge Labs' video at that point. But I'll try to show how to build some other stuff that I've built, and hopefully it'll be helpful to other people who like to forge. But anyways, I'll see y'all in another video. Peace.